Well, I think dispute resolution is critical for any agreement to work. I think that's central to how the international trade system needs to operate. I think anybody in Michigan has seen this play out with another very clear example, which was Michigan cherries that remain in a very serious situation. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit, but I think overall the need for sound dispute resolution doesn't preclude the need for predictable trade agreements. Let's get the agreements in place. Let's make sure that we are moving product between countries in a way that benefits both sides. And then work through the dispute issues. There always will be issues. And I agree with my friends here on the panel. Certainly the WTO is an important mechanism for dispute resolution. And I think everybody involved can continue to work together to improve the processes. But we do need those baseline agreements in place, and we need to be trading cross-border with those we've historically interacted with.
Very good, panel. Now let's take some questions from our audience. Angela, do you have a questioner ready for us?
We do. And actually we have Jamie Spitko, who is the Deputy Division Director of Agriculture Development for the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. Jamie, you get the first question.
Great, thank you, Angela. So kind of a two-part question for the panel. Can you talk about what markets do you think that we should look at and focus on next for opening up or expanding our trade opportunities? And then how do you feel either state and or federal government can help in that? What programs or services do you think would be helpful then in opening those markets?
Okay, let's start with Chuck. Chuck, any thoughts on that question?
Well, sure thing. And my guess is some of our friends from the commodity organizations have got very specific opportunities. I know they've been working on, continue to work on. I would say we can start by reestablishing strong links with the Asia Pacific region, not just China. But there's certainly been discussion both of multilateral and then maybe even some one-to-one trade agreements that one of our panelists, I think, mentioned at the top. Dave, I think, talked a little bit, for example, about Vietnam. I think further strengthening the China agreement is obviously one that's top of mind for everybody. Making sure USMCA is implemented properly is a big one. And we've also appreciated seeing some additional one-to-one trade discussion take off with some African nations. I think there's opportunity there. And certainly with the UK, that's an interesting situation, but an opportunity for many of our commodities here in Michigan.
Jose, can you chime in on the question?
Yes, for sure. In one of our main markets that we have been trying to focus ourselves on the ethanol side has been on India. And I think that India, being the country that it is and the amount of the big population that they have, obviously represent a good opportunity, a good market for us. In the very short term, there's very few markets that can actually bring that demand that we need in certain products to fulfill, some of our surpluses. In regards to a more sophisticated markets, obviously the UK represents a good opportunity now to start to work with them. But definitely Asia has been a good engine of, increase of demand for a lot of products. Especially in our case as well, in some of the soy meal and soybean products as well. Finished products over there are definitely increasing. So there's a lot to expand in the Asian market as well. Thank you.
Okay, Jose. Joe, a little follow-up on Jamie's question?
Sure. Jamie, I appreciate the question. Obviously, you and I have worked together on some of these as in the past, but you know that I always like data, and you've done a great job in providing us with some information about various markets that kind of steer us in a direction. So at least the edible bean industry is sort of digging where their taters are, if you will. There's opportunities that your data can help us find and identify and pursue. And then you also give us opportunities, or you have in the past, and will continue, I think, to find platforms in these various markets where we can we can efficiently and cost effectively congregate with potential buyers and old buyers, new buyers, do a little prospecting in a cost effective way. And we appreciate your help there and look forward to more of that in the future.
And a final thought from our panel. Lori, what's your thought?
Well, you know, I would concur with Chuck in terms of the necessity for free trade agreements and making sure that we have them. I've worked with Jamie for a long time now, and you know, having the ability to have solid trade agreements and making sure that they're enforced and implemented properly, I think is key. In terms of what I've seen or trends that I've seen, I've been to 3 different countries in the EU in the last year and a half. And while they're representing both Canada and the US on different topics, I've seen a definite interest from Poland, Italy, and Ireland, Northern Ireland, on wanting to trade in the agriculture sector with the United States. So I agree with all the places that have been mentioned, but I would say I've seen, you know, industries there, you know, groups, associations who definitely expressed interest. So I think that that's definitely a market, you know, that could be tapped into.
All right, Lori, thank you very much. Angela, do we have another question?
We do. Thanks, Terry. We next have Mary Kalpinsky, who is the CEO of Michigan Pork. Mary, to you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. Actually, Jamie kind of answered and asked my question that I was thinking about too. We really, for the pork industry, trade is really important. We export about 25% of the pork that we produce in Michigan and the United States. And so about 1/3 of the value of hogs actually comes from international markets. While Canada and Mexico account for about 40% of our exports, China and Japan are also huge markets, but I think we need to continue to look at some of these emerging markets and figure out a way that we can you know, have a level playing field on some of these international markets. And some of the ones that we're looking at in the pork industry are some of the Southeast Asia markets, like Vietnam and the Philippines, that really have a lot of potential for the pork industry, and we would like to continue looking there. Just, you know, if there was any other comments on building on other export markets and how we can make sure that we have that level playing field for all of us, I think would be good discussion. Thanks.
Great suggestion. Jose, you want to start as far as what Mary has talked about?
Yes, I would say that we are definitely for the pork industry itself, I definitely will look into Latin America as well as a good trading partner and option. I know that Mexico represents a good opportunity, but what about the rest of the countries down there in Latin America? In terms of logistics and infrastructure, I think that they represent a good alternative, and also a good viable market because of the closeness of that market to our geography. So I wouldn't discard Latin America as a market. I think that there's a lot of, you know, things that you can actually develop over there going forward. And definitely, again, Asia, you know, seems to be bringing more and more to the table, and a good alternative and opportunity for us to expand in those, you know, pork markets. Sure.
Good advice, Jose. Lori, any input from you?
Would definitely concur with Jose. I was going to say Central America. I think that there's definitely an appetite, no pun intended, but for the pork market from the US to Central America. That would be my suggestion.
Joe, you've done some work with Central America. What are your thoughts?
Well, we spend a lot of time down there, and Mary, as you know, nothing goes together better than pork and beans. Maybe there's some partnerships that we could work on. Yeah, we think we know our way around pretty well down there. There's always a concern, and I think one of the challenges, one of the areas we could work on is trying to figure out a way to, I don't really want to use the word guarantee, but give confidence to our sellers, our exporters, when it comes to payment. So how is there a mechanism, an affordable mechanism today that can help us afford to extend credit in some of those markets? How do we get established in markets where we're nervous about credit? There's some tools in place already. Sometimes they're relatively expensive and become a bit of a hurdle to entry, but I think there are some conversations that could be or should be had around sort of protecting our exporters and give them a little more courage, if you will.
And Dave, some thoughts?
Well, thanks. I think a lot of the things that apply to wheat probably apply to pork. So certain areas, if they're needing to buy food, they're probably buying wheat, and they're probably also going to be in the market for pork. I think probably the big issue is going to be still the big elephant in the room is going to be China, and then it's going to be the issues that we've talked about before with that is getting free market access into that country. So I think that's about the only advice I can add to the conversation. A lot of topics or good points have already been brought up. So, but you have a good product in pork. So,
very good, Dave. Hey, thank you. Mary, thank you. Very good question. Angela, I think we have another questioner online.
We do, and actually we have one in from the media, and this is Nicole Heslip with Brownfield Ag News. Her question is, for any and all of the panelists, do you feel U.S. agriculture is in a better position today than when the trade wars began?
Joe, why don't we start with you? What's your thought?
I was afraid you were going to call on me first. Well, I think ag, and I'm probably most familiar with Michigan. I think ag is in a great spot. So whether it's tariffs or COVID or any of the headlines recently that have made the consumer, I believe, a bit more aware of agriculture and what we do and what some of the challenges are. But I think we've got a long ways to go in terms of figuring out how to supplement that conversation. So I'm an old guy, so I'm a veteran of being around agriculture, but I don't think it's ever been in a better spot. I think we've got people equipped to have better conversations, and some of those are happening just like we have here today. So I'm excited about agriculture at this moment. I like some of the youth that we've got involved in our industries, and I'm anxious to see us move forward.
Lori, I'm kind of interested in your take on this. What's your thought?
Well, I would say that if you asked me about a year and a half ago, I would have had greater concerns, especially when we were in the middle of the tariff war, and we've seen some of the retaliation. I remember. So where I was born is called Leamington, Ontario. It's the tomato capital of Canada. So very much farm-rich area, agriculture, greenhouses everywhere. And there was a debate about whether to buy Heinz ketchup or French's ketchup. And it was a very stressful media interview that I had all over the ketchup, right? So now looking back, I would say that we are in a better position. I think in a way, and I'm cautiously saying this, but COVID has really strengthened the agriculture. And I think people realize the importance of nutrition and ensuring a steady supply chain. I think people walking into grocery stores and thinking that there might not be food there, right, at times, realize the importance of agriculture. And I think that there's been a bit of an awakening, an awareness, and an education.
Jose, I'm sure you've had firsthand knowledge of this particular question. What's your thought?
So I'm sorry to say, but I missed half of the question. So I've been trying to catch up to see what the question has been. I'm sorry. So there was a glitch and I couldn't hear.
Basically what we're asking is trade any better now than it was before? Have we seen an improvement in trade? What's your thought?
I honestly, I don't think that we have seen a lot of improvement in trade. I think that there has been from my perspective, there has been a glooming, gray cloud over trade for the past couple of years, which has brought a lot of uncertainty, particularly in the U.S. And into us being able to understand what are the rules of the game going forward. And that is something that has gotten in the way for some of our buyers and some of our customers from other countries to come and aggressively and continuously want to discuss, contracts going forward and what is going to happen, in the next couple of years. So I think that, again, clarity hasn't been there 100%. I understand that, there's a lot of good intentions out there to make this work, but truly, I believe that so far, not having the real understanding of what the rules are, has definitely gotten in the way for us to be able to, do a better job ourselves.
Okay, Jose. Chuck, what's your thought?
Well, I think Jose just made a really important point. I would say anybody in agriculture would tell you this is a really exciting time to be in the industry. It's full of potential. It's critical in rural communities. The challenge with the tariffs and the trade wars we've seen is that we could be doing even more. And because we've had surprises the last few years in the form of new tariffs on some of our largest trading partners, that creates uncertainty that limits the ceiling. I think there's really no limit to what we can achieve in Michigan. I think we are all really proud to be in this industry, and we're proud of Michigan agriculture because there's a lot of different things that make us unique and special, and also attractive to buyers in the international marketplace. So I think just to build off what Jose has said, by breaking down tariffs, by creating new free trade agreements and reaching out to international partners and building those bridges, I think we've got even more potential in the industry, which is it's a really exciting thing.
All right. And Dave, a final thought?
Yes, thank you, Terry. I thought maybe you were going to forget about me, and I'd certainly like to talk about the benefits of USMCA. That has been a big win, I think, for a lot of commodities, but especially for wheat. Canada and Mexico account for 25% of all U.S. ag exports, and that's including wheat and other things. So, but Mexico is the largest market for U.S. wheat at nearly $1 billion. So we really feel that that's been a good agreement to us. And in addition to that agreement, it's opened up the Canadian border to more of U.S. wheat. Under the NAFTA agreement, they were able to basically any U.S. wheat that went into Canada could only be feed grade, even if it was milling quality. They'd only pay you for feed grade. And now that's opened up to, as long as the variety is a registered variety grown in Canadian variety grown in Michigan that's registered in Canada, we can, or Michigan or any place in the United States, we can now access that market and be graded on whatever quality wheat it is. If it's feed grade, it's feed grade. If it's junk, then junk, it's junk. But if it's good quality wheat, we get paid for it. So that's been a real win. We've had a win with Japan. It wasn't a TPP we kind of wanted, but we do have an agreement with Japan. And we've talked about China. I guess the jury's still out whether we're gaining or not. But really look on. We've made some progress, especially USMCA.
All right. I'd never forget about you, Dave. I want you to know that, right? All right, Angela, let's take our next question.
You bet. And we are getting lots of great questions coming into the chat box. So I'm going to introduce our next front row, and then perhaps, Terry, we can just have one person respond so we can get through these fantastic questions that are coming in across the board. So the next on deck is going to be John Pandel. He's the Director of Special Projects with Pandel Brothers Incorporated. John.
Well, we just brought up NAFTA, and we just renegotiated, or NAFTA USMCA, which we just renegotiated. Yet as we speak here, there's a hearing going on with USTR, with specialty producers, essentially talking about how they didn't get a good deal and how they want to introduce to dishonor our treaty obligations. And Chuck brought up predictable trade agreements. Really the question is how destabilizing is that to our markets, and how do we protect ourselves against these types of reprisals?
Chuck, I think that's a real good question for you.
Sure, absolutely. A couple things. I think it's a really good question. And the first thing is we have to have trade agreements that have clear enforcement mechanisms. I don't think it's any secret, for example, to use a different example with USMCA, we have some disagreements with Canada on dairy policy. That's been very out in the open, and there's going to be, I think, an ongoing process to where, the U.S. will continue to hold Canada accountable for its dairy commitments in USMCA. I think any trade agreement is going to be a give and take in terms of enforcement dispute resolution. I do think it's worth bringing up very briefly an unrelated but very similar issue that we've had here in Michigan that highlights what happens when dispute resolution doesn't work properly, and that's Michigan cherries. The Michigan cherry industry, it's not just the Traverse Bay region and the west side, but I think anybody here in Michigan feels some cultural connection to our cherry industry. It's something really special. It creates a huge number of jobs, especially in the northern lower peninsula. And the cherry industry was subject to frankly, a very baffling decision by the ITC this spring. It's something we've followed very closely. I think our friends in agriculture have followed. And in particular, we appreciate our congressional delegation, especially our Senate delegation. It's been very outspoken on this issue and really pushed for resolution that makes sense for Michigan cherry growers. I think that's one example of what can happen when you have a local and regional industry impacted. But John, I think you're spot on. There has to be a clear dispute resolution process. I think we can all agree on that.
And I have to ask Lori her thoughts on this. Lori, please.
Well, Chuck mentioned what I was going to say. I think that as free traders, as we are, there has been a lot of debate within Canada about opening up our dairy markets. Prior to the USMCA, Canada went through the process of entering into its trade agreement with the EU, the CETA, so the Canadian European Comprehensive, and access to our dairy was requested there, and there's an appetite for that and for that market. So I think that that there are going to be some issues that we're going to see, but I think we have to just stay the course, and whatever we've agreed to, whatever we've committed to as countries, I think we have to follow through and try our best collectively to maintain policy continuity.
Okay, Angela, next question, please.
You bet. So I'm going to tee up our next, which is Jana Fritz. She's the Executive Director of the Michigan Soybean Promotion Committee. Before Jana speaks, we're going to tee her there. We also have a question. I'm going to pose this coming in from Tristan Brown in Senator Peters' office, who says, great discussion today. Curious to hear folks' thought on India, given their population and the president's visit there earlier this year. So be thinking on that second question. Jana, let's turn it to you.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, panelists. We've already delved in a little bit about USMCA, and we, as the Soybean Association, are equally excited about the opportunities with USMCA. However, there's been some recent conversations and some speculation that Mexico is looking at some non-scientific based regulations for certain chemistries. I'm wondering what would be some thoughts on behalf of the panelists for moving, as they move forward when they're looking at restricting chemistry or banning certain chemistries. What does that do to our trading partnerships with Mexico?
Let's push that question over to Joe Kramer. What's your thought?
Well, Jenna, we sure don't want to hear about that, do we? But yeah, I've heard those same rumblings. At this point, I sort of want to trust the system that's in place to have our back, if you will. But we don't know the answer and how that's all going to play out. The recent tariff that was imposed in Canada, I think just puts a little shadow on the entire conversation. So yeah, we're excited about the agreement. We hope that there's mechanisms. We trust there's mechanisms in there for the legal eyes to make it right, if you will.
And while we're talking, Angela, about that second question, I want to defer over to Jose. And this was in regards to India, Jose.
Definitely, India represents a very solid and a good market for different products. Not for all of them, I have to clarify. In regards to our product, ethanol, I believe that there's a good potential demand over there, especially considering the environmental benefits of using ethanol in a gasoline blend. In regards to other products, I believe that we, could do a better and stronger promotion in terms of products that obviously the Indian population and people over there could actually demand. I'm talking about food products mostly. And we have been trying, obviously, through the various mechanisms and entities to try to promote that. But we have definitely seen an uptick in our demand of fuel ethanol going into India ourselves. And it's not just thanks to the government promotions, but by the independent private organizations that have helped us getting over there. So I definitely encourage more, not just funding, but, a better strategy to attack that market from the other products that we can actually export over there.
Thank you very much, Jose, for your insight. Jenna, thank you very much for your question. Angela, we have another one.
Yes, we have one coming in on the chat box that is a media question from Ashley Davenport of Michigan Ag Today, who is asking, with the 2020 presidential election gearing up, is there some nervousness surrounding the election when it comes to ag trade across the board, particularly in terms of China? And then be thinking on that one, folks. And then I'm also going to introduce Ed Breitmeyer, who is with the Michigan Corn Marketing Board. So Ed, I'll have you pose your question as well.
Morning. Thank you for being able to address the panel this morning. I actually am a delegate to the U.S. Grains Council, and I've worked with a lot of the things that you're talking about. So I'm going to try to ask maybe a little deeper question in this case. As we think about the future of the U.S. agriculture industry's global competitiveness, are there any trends you've noticed or activities that our global competitors are engaged in to advance their competitiveness that you think we should be aware of?
Dave, what's your thought?
That's a very good question, Ed, and I'm glad to address that because there's two examples that come to mind real quickly that countries that have upgraded their infrastructure, and that first one being Brazil. That's always been a problem for them. They've been a big producer, really taken a lot of the market share, but they've always had trouble getting the product to market. But they're definitely making major improvements in their infrastructure to get their product to market. And the second one that's come to in the world market, especially in wheat, has been Ukraine. They've become a big producer and they've spent a lot of money into their port system, and so we need to, as was mentioned earlier, that we need to make sure that we keep our infrastructure here in the United States not only up to date, but maybe to improve it, enhance it, and because water and rail are certainly the cheaper ways to move products and what highways are. Not that we certainly need our highways too, but we certainly need to, I think, wake up to the fact that we need to upgrade and stay competitive in be able to move our product.
And briefly, Lori, your thoughts?
I would say one of the biggest trends that we were seeing prior to the pandemic, but then we've seen spikes during and currently, would be e-commerce. So the ability for farmers, small, medium, and large, and industries to be able to get their goods where they need to go in an online capacity, similar to what Dave is saying from an infrastructure perspective, just having the appropriate, Wi-Fi connectivity in some of these areas is not there, is not available. But more and more we're seeing either, fresh and even processed fruits, vegetables, commodities that there's a demand for online purchases, and some countries are doing a really good job of mobilizing their digital trade efforts, and I think there's always going to be room for improvement in that area.
Lori, thank you. Ashley, I'm going to address your question by asking our panel this question. Okay, this is what I call the lightning round, so are you ready for this? Okay, don't head for cover. Stand right out there now. Brief answers on this one. Today is January the 21st of 2021. Now, you're invited to a meeting with the president, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, and it doesn't make any difference where you're sitting around the table. There's one thing you want to ask them: to immediately help boost American agriculture and boost exports. Since I've got you up, Lori, you're first. What do you
Can I
think?
pass because I'm not an American citizen?
No.
No? I thought I would take a stab at it. I would say policy continuity. That's what I would ask for, is just consistent policy that helps with the economic, development, the facilitation, the movement, the export of agriculture, and making sure that that policy is continuous, consistent across the board.
Are you nervous about this upcoming election?
Of course I am. I'm your neighbor.
Chuck Lipstrew, your comment, please.
If I had an opportunity to sit down with our federal leaders on January 21st next year, there would be a very clear message. We would ask them to listen to the voices of rural America and agriculture that have called for predictable and open trade for the last several years. And we would ask for a seat at the table to talk about what works for our industry and what doesn't. And I think no matter what happens in this election, it's imperative for our industry to keep doing what we have done the last few years, which is to speak up on behalf of open trade that benefits farmers, businesses that are our members at MABA, and the overall rural community. I think that would be the most important message to deliver at this point.
And are you waiting for the day after the election?
You broke up, Terry. I hate to say it, but the connection broke.
Are you waiting for the day after the election?
Well, I think whatever happens from a trade perspective, we have a real opportunity next year to engage with our delegation, to engage with the administration, and to make sure that agriculture can export. It's absolutely critical.
All right, Joe Kramer, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with both Lori and Chuck. I believe in the idea of a clear-cut philosophy that's well communicated. If everybody can get behind that, if you will, the pieces will kind of fall into place. So we need consistency and a commitment to free trade, if you will.
And are you patiently or anxiously awaiting the day after election?
I'm clearly anxiously awaiting. I just want to see the outcome. I want to understand where that leadership is, whoever it is, what's their vision and where they're going to take us. And like Chuck said, I think we have a great relationship, and we've had great support out of our delegation in Washington, D.C. The Michigan folks enjoy that rapport with those folks. They've always got an open door for us. We'd sure like to see that continue, and are optimistic that it will. So we're excited about 2021.
Joe, thank you. Jose, I saw a little smile on your face when the question came up. Give me your thought.
Yeah. My smile was in regards to obviously the outcome of the election, right? But I think that I agree with all the panelists over here. We need clarity. We need to have a clear understanding, consistency of what our, playing field is going to be and the rules of the game are going to be going forward. But also, I would ask them to have, to ask our trade counterparts some accountability. And what I mean in this is, okay, we sat down, we renegotiated a deal with China, and we would like to understand where we're standing, out of the $24 billion that were agreed first and the additional $16 billion of trade, where are we standing with all that? What was the intention? So accountability is crucial. in this particular setting, because we need, as representatives of the agribusiness and farming sector over here, and on the private sector as well, we're planning, what are we going to do in the next, not just 6 months, but year, 3 years, and 10 years from now, right? And that's basically crucial to understand where we're going to stand. So accountability is part of what I would have asked, for sure.
And where will you be the day after the election? And are you a little apprehensive?
I'm, yes, anxiously waiting to what is going to be the outcome, apprehensive to see what is going to be our future, for sure. I'm also not a U.S. citizen myself, so I know always been involved in trade and international dealings. So it's crucial for us, for my career, for what I do over here, and what is going to be our intention, for sure, especially for the ethanol industry. We have been suffering quite a bit in the past 3 years.
Thank you very much, Jose. And Dave, I'm going to wrap it up with you, since you're one of our sponsors for our broadcast today. What's your thought?
Well, first I would thank him for the invitation, and certainly be honored to meet with those individuals. That'd be quite an honor. But that being said, we've pretty well discussed it. Definitely trade agreements, and I think we need a commitment to them. We got to realize the importance of the value of the trade that agriculture can bring to the country, and we certainly want that level playing field, and we certainly like to see new agreements. And Vietnam, Kenya, and the UK are new ground that we should be exploring.
Very good, David. Thank you. Angela?
Great. Well, I'm excited that we now have the opportunity to share the results of our poll. So thanks for everyone in the audience who has participated. So our first question is, which is or are the most important functions of the World Trade Organization? 17% said administering WTO agreements. 23% said forum for trade negotiations. 50% said handling trade disputes. We certainly heard that on the discussion today. 33% said monitoring trade policies. 17% cooperation with other international organizations. And 57%, our top number of all, harmonizing trade relations among our trading partners. So those were the top on the WTO question. Question number 2, which of the following actions should be a top priority for the next administration to boost U.S. food and agriculture exports? And you can choose multiple, but by far number 1 on this list at 60% is repeal tariffs or reduce the burden of tariffs. 23% said re-enter the Trans-Pacific Partnership. 27% said negotiate new bilateral agreements. 23% said negotiate new multilateral trade agreements like the TPP. 13% said negotiate new sanitary and phytosanitary, such as labeling standards. 17% at finishing existing trade negotiations, and 27% at enforcing existing trade agreements. So thanks for everyone for participating in our poll, and I'll turn it back to you, Terry.
Angela, thank you very much. I guess just from the understanding of what our results have been when it comes to the poll today, it's quite obvious that a lot of us do have quite a few questions, and each and every one of us appreciate the members of our panel. Our panelists today have done a fantastic effort of trying to keep agriculture afloat and to keep agriculture here in Michigan an integral part of our life. Obviously, here in Michigan, we have 3 major industries. We have the automotive industry, we have tourism, and we have agriculture. And agriculture has been such a big player in our state. It's great to see that members of the backbone of our industry are represented here today and have done a terrific job in representing the industry here in our state. So panelists, thank you very much for taking your time out of what I know has been a very, very busy day. I just want to go down through each one of them very briefly. Dave Milliken, thank you very much. It's been great to talk with you. What's on the calendar for you tomorrow?
Tomorrow it's time to mow the lawn. How's that sound? That's kind of a relaxing job.
Well, I'll tell you, if we get some rain, which we need, let's do it. All righty. Jose, thank you very much. Your final thought from you.
Thank you as well. This has been a very interesting discussion, and hopefully we can definitely, get some of these ideas across the board and to some of the, decision makers up there, to understand what we have encountered and what we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis in order for us to make better decisions. Thank you again, and thank all the panelists as well to participate.
Thank you. And Lori, what's on the agenda for you?
I'm drafting agreements for more food retailers to be able to import and export out of Canada and the US. That's my day and my weekend.
All right. And let somebody else mow the lawn, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there you go. Joe Kramer, you going to stick around town or are you heading out?
Well, a little bit of both, Terry. We're going to look at some beans this afternoon, probably again tomorrow. And hopefully, if the weather allows it, maybe a little boat ride tomorrow night.
Hey, there you go. And finally, Chuck Lipstrew. Chuck.
Well, I just appreciate everybody for the opportunity to join. This is an issue where we can make some progress. In answer to your question, Terry, I would just observe that trade is just one issue that we deal with at MABA, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, as everybody knows, going on at the state level right now. That will be the remainder of our day and probably tomorrow and maybe beyond that.
And Chuck, I really want to congratulate you folks in your fundraising efforts with the golf tournaments. You've done a terrific job.
Thanks, Terry. And a lot of our different groups on today have done some great work with their different members, but we were really proud here about a month and a half ago to award 17 scholarships to people wanting to enter the industry. And I know others on the call have similar efforts underway. I appreciate it.
Yes, they do. And that's quite frankly, when it comes to agriculture, that chain, it's only as strong as its weakest link. And again, I have to say thank you very much to all our panelists. And a special thank yous go out to the Michigan Wheat Program and the Farmers for Free Trade. Thank you, each and every one of you, for participating. It's been a pleasure being a part of your day.
Well, oh, and Jody, we need to unmic.
Hey, thank you, Terry. And I think, one of the things that came out, and we talked about things we could do and way we could make things better. But I think one of those is the optimism that we have as we look to the future and look at those opportunities, because this is the leadership that we have that's out there representing us, being part of these discussions. And just what a great morning to be able to have all this discussion. Terry and Angela, thank you so much for facilitating the session. I think it's very clear to everyone that international trade is critically important to U.S. agriculture. We need this stability that comes with international trade agreements, and we need a rules-based system with opportunities to be able to work through, like the one that's created with the WTO. Rules and certainty help us develop and maintain markets that benefit all of our farmers. With that, again, I would like to thank our panelists, and I would also like to thank the AgTalks sponsors, including the National Association of Wheat Growers, the National Corn Growers Association, the National Milk Producers Federation, the U.S. Dairy Export Council, Farmers for Free Trade, the Corn Refiners Association, Plant-Based Products Council, CAECO ISOM, World Strategies, Fresh Produce Association of the Americas, the North American Meat Institute, the American Farm Bureau, and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. Thank you so much for making this conversation possible through your support. And don't forget, the next AgTalks Town Hall will be held in Pennsylvania on Thursday, August 27th, and in Wisconsin, Tuesday, September 1st. If you would like to hear more discussion as you did today, there will be some new topics, so make sure you register for the AgTalks town halls at www.agtalks.net. On behalf of the Michigan Wheat Program, Michigan's agriculture industry, and all of our speakers and supporters, thanks to all of you for participating today. And with that, we'll bring this incredible Michigan Town Hall to a close. Thank you and have a great afternoon.